Okay, so this is our next session is black box versus open door. Why Sakai fixes bugs differently, and Earl is going to present on this topic for us. So take it away, Earl.
Thanks, Wilma. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this presentation about why how Sakai fixes bugs differently than other let's say LMSs or commercial LMSs. So let's get started. Um, so as everybody knows, a bug generally starts with a user. It could be a student or a faculty person at an institution that's using Sakai. And it's a real problem that was encountered there. Usually, then the local institution, the problem gets reported to the local institution. Sometimes at that point, there's a support person at that institution that then, looks into the issue and um, either verifies it or corrects, if there's a correction at the local institution that happens. But if it is a real issue, usually then at that point, the local support will um, file an issue with Sakai, the project, and which I refer to a lot here as the community, right? So the issue then gets filed in Jira. Um, the issue then gets triaged, right? The developer will take a look, uh, and then QAs it, and then if everything has gone according to plan, then the issue ends up in a release. So so that's what happens in Sakai, right? That's the short and sweet of, kind of how a bug starts and ends in Sakai. And then I'll go over typically what happens in a commercial LMS. Again, that's the same problem, if the end user, whether student or faculty, encounters some issue, and they will then usually go to whatever LMS they're using. They'll go to their sort of vendor portal or issue tracking system and log a ticket there, right? Usually at that point, once the ticket is logged with them, um, there isn't really a lot of visibility, um, after that. For example, they don't know if the ticket's being worked on. Typically, they don't know if it's been scheduled to work on. They don't know if there's been any progress. There just really isn't any uh, kind of insight typically into those sort of vendor walls, if you will, right? About when the issue might get fixed, right? And so generally what ends up happening is you end up waiting for an extreme amount of time sometimes. I would say if if it, you're very lucky if that's not the case. And again, all this is on the vendor's timeline, right? Um, and sometimes many of these issues are never even fixed, right? Sometimes the vendor looks at the issue and just says, we're not going to work on that, or that's just not in our interest, right? And so, um, that's a very real possibility. So again, I kind of walked through this already, but in Sakai, anyone can report an issue. It doesn't have to be an end user. It can be admins at the institutions. It could be developers. It really, the key thing is anybody can report a bug. Um, Everything is public, right? The issue tracker is public. Everything about it is public. Um, uh, Institutions can comment. They can call attention to issues. They can add more detail. There's all kinds of things that, institutions can participate. And at any moment they can see what the current status of that issue is. Um, they can also contribute to testing, right? Testing the issue. They can contribute to maybe they fix the issue. That happens frequently too, right? We've got a number of people that fix issues from different institutions. And the same thing goes with testing, documentation. All of these things can be worked on in the open by anybody. Um, and then in the end, uh, uh, the fix then, once it passes all of those hurdles, it gets shipped in a release to everyone, and it's open and it's all open. So again, this is just this slide just kind of shows again, it's just that life cycle, right? Um, that I've already laid out to you, right? It's kind of like a circle, and at any point, it's anybody can see what's going on with it. By comparison, to the commercial LMS, you can kind of, I've just lined them up to show you, the differences here. You file a ticket again with that vendor portal, and, you kind of just don't know what's going to happen at that point. You know, um, you just don't know. And with Sakai, at every step, you can see exactly what's happening and what goes on. So, um, I used I just used the same photos Wilma here, but this slide is all it takes a community to perform all of these things. Everybody works in that community and works in the open, um, and it's this is what we believe sets open source apart from, let's say, a commercial LMS. So I could show you a real bug. Just, these are just some screen grabs from Sakai's Jira about, when we open bugs. Um, Most everybody here has seen these things. Then it goes, once the bug is open, and again, anybody can open it, it goes through issue triage. Really probably the big thing here is, the severity, like the issue is, reviewed for accuracy, right? Um, making sure that, the proper fields and everything like that are all filled in. Christina typically heads this up and she does a great job. Um, this is done in the QA planning call on Thursdays at this point. And but primarily the severity is what really and the priority, right? Like, that's one of the main issues that or the main detail about the issue that gets set during this triage, right? If obviously if it's a bug that affects grading in some way, that's going to be a pretty high severity or the maximum severity. Um, you know, Again, in the issue review, making sure that there are steps to reproduce, right? Accurate steps that reproduce the problem. That's of the utmost importance as well in this step. And again, anybody can participate at this step. All you got to do is come to the meetings. Um, and then after that, once it's usually been triaged, then the community begins, right? It goes into, everybody can now see what's going on, and a developer picks up the issue, begins working on it, creates a fix, puts a fix into GitHub, and and code review occurs. That's what you're seeing here. It's just a screen grab out of GitHub. Um, once it goes through that code verification or that code review, and it gets merged in GitHub, it is then added to the master branch of Sakai. And it's at this point that it gets deployed um, very shortly, within 12 hours. The issue will be deployed on a test environment. And at that point, QA can then begin their work. And they will go through, follow the test plan, verify that, um, it is working as it is working and that there's no, sort of any weird issues with it. Um, sometimes sometimes, developers will test sort of the happy path, if you will, and QA kind of tests, the other paths, right? That might not be so apparent, right? QA is really good at these kinds of things. And once it's been verified, then it is eligible to be merged back into a branch, and which is essentially saying it gets scheduled for a release in the future. So again, the this is just again, it's just another slide just depicting, that whole process that Sakai does. Um, you know, uh, let's just move on. So why does it matter? Uh, why does openness matter, right? Why the open door and not the black box, right? Um, and a lot of it is that our community is more responsive to our users. That's in the end, that's really what uh, um, what the community adds, right? And it allows those users to participate in the product that they're using. That builds trust, right? Um, and then also, the community builds this level of knowledge that lives within the community. And again, and it just reinforces the software that we're all using, that we're all working on, that we're all using. And people get a sense of, again, of that trust that they have. It's not this sort of, mostly one-way street with a vendor, right? So this slide just all this slide does is just highlight a lot of a lot of the resources, Slacks, mailing lists, meetings, Jira, GitHub, and Confluence. Those are what all those links are to, the test servers. So if you're interested, these are sort of the resources that every member in the community uses every day. That's really what this slide is about. And I would say to anybody that's wondering, well, how do I get involved? And I would say if you're already in this call and you're watching this presentation, then I would say you're already a part of it. All you have to do is, again, go back to the previous slide and get involved. Uh, the community needs people to do many things, and there are people of all levels uh, with all kinds of skills that are required. Um, that's the presentation for today. Does anybody have any questions?
I think Dr. Chuck had a not really question, but more of a comment in the chat. You might want to mention the core meeting and mentoring for PRs.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the meetings they happen typically every week. Core calls are on Tuesdays at 10. The QA planning call is on Thursdays at 10. There are other meetings like teaching and learning, which is a functional team that reviews features typically. They meet, is it every 2 weeks, Wilma? Um,
It's the first and third Wednesdays. at
There you go.
11.
Yeah. Uh, and um, and then every once in a while we'll have a PMC meeting, and uh, and everybody's welcome to attend those, all of those meetings. But yeah, I mean, it's if you almost wonder why would people, why wouldn't people choose more the openness? Why do they choose kind of the question, or the one of the questions I wanted to get into was in this presentation, was to talk about, why do people choose openness over, let's say, a commercial provided solution, um, that is usually a black box. It's closed, it's proprietary, possibly, um, and to kind of, uh, talk about some of those differences. So yeah, if anybody wants to speak up, this is the time to do it. Meaning I wanted to have an open conversation. Sorry.
So, Earl, I'm never afraid to talk. Anyone else just jump in and stop me from talking. Um, I would say that lots of organizations choose closed, and and like you, I scratch my head. I don't like teaching in a piece of software that I don't feel I have any input into, um, and and I don't feel like I have any effect on its roadmap. As a teacher, I want to be a good teacher and I want to be a better teacher and I want to be sitting in my classroom and I want to think, oh, ooh, ooh, that would make this better. And imagine or dream that maybe I could make the system that I'm using, that my campus is using better. And so that's what's beautiful about this is that any individual can imagine a need, an innovation, an improvement, and then they can advocate for that. But then there's a downside to that, and that is um, there's not an infinite amount of resources, and uh, the resources may not agree with you on the importance or priority. And sometimes um, someone just wants a checkbox because they want the tool to go to do, right now, assignments, let's just say, has 25 checkboxes. So that's 2 to the 25th power choices that assignments can make. And then it turns out that there's one more checkbox, like the always launch LTI tool checkbox. So that's 2 to the 26th power of options. And that particular checkbox got added because we were working on the Turnitin thing. And, people thought of it quick and it was an easy thing to add. And that checkbox, the time from concept to master to 25x, was probably about 4 weeks. And so for some of us, we could just have an idea, and in 4 weeks, it's in 25x. Um, and we thought that was important because it really helped the Turnitin integration. The problem is that in a closed environment, you don't even report bugs after a while. You don't even you don't even imagine that something could be better because you tried to report something and it never got better. Someone else tried to report something and nothing got done with it. And so what happens is because it's obtuse, it's closed, there's no tracking, there's no input. After a while, you begin to accept that nothing changes and it's not going to change. And you should just deal, work around, don't complain, keep your mouth shut, don't have any hopes, don't have any dreams, don't have any hopes for the LMS. And it turns out that after a while, and I mean, I've been using Canvas now for a while, and I felt a lot better when I gave up hope, to put it that way. And so I think they construct it. And I think the people that are drawn to those systems, at least the IT organizations that are drawn to those systems, like the feeling that they don't have control, like the feeling that nothing's going to get fixed, like the feeling that nothing's going to change. Because it just turns out that you don't have to wake up and you don't have to say, did my thing make progress today or did it not make progress? And especially some of the people who are more deeply involved with Sakai that are teachers or instructional designers or administrators, they know that they've waited for things to happen for a long time. And in a closed system, they wouldn't have had any hope. So the fact that it took a long time means that they just had no hope. Hope is not allowed. Dreams are not allowed. And wishing for something to get better is not allowed. And so it just makes it a lot easier. I mean, when's the last time you wanted Microsoft Word to have a feature? And the answer is never, because we just assume that we can't change Microsoft Word. And so that's kind of a freeing thing in its own way, to say we're just stuck with Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or whatever. So, yeah, there's two sides to it, right? At some level, if you're involved in this open process, you can't imagine anything else. And then if you're not involved in an open project process, you find advantages in that non-open process. And that's the market today.
Nicely said, Dr. Chuck. Thank you for those insights. Is there anybody else that would like to add anything?
Well, it's kind of hard to follow the benefits of losing all hope, but I'll try to pick up the mood a little bit and to say that one of the things that I find truly valuable about open source in general and Sakai specifically is that it's sort of a live research lab in a sense. It's a place where people can try out their ideas and they do have a visibility and a control over the system, unlike they do with other commercial products. And so for that reason, it makes a really nice place to onboard people who want to learn. So if you have, students that want to learn about software development, get some hands-on experience, the fact that we have such an open process is really kind of a gold mine in terms of getting students involved. So if you have students that you are interested in maybe, having some sort of a hands-on project or an internship, um, the open source nature of Sakai and other platforms like it make them ideally suited to letting students get those real world skills. Would anybody else like to chime in? We've got about 5 minutes left.
I'll just say I liked that, you know, um, the presentation that came from Chris today, on the stack uh, question type. Thought that was really neat, a really neat thing.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a prime example of the community deciding that they would like to incorporate something and potentially incorporating something like Stack into Sakai in some fashion to provide additional features.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, then we have about 15 minutes before our final presentation of the day, and that one is going to be a modern open source approach to badges and credentials with Dr. Chuck and Sam from Longsight. So I'm sure you'll find that one interesting. So hopefully you guys will come back in 15 minutes for our final presentation, and then we'll have some prizes to give away for our trivia folks and for the random lottery that will follow our final presentation. So hopefully you'll come back in about 15 minutes for the rest of today's event.